Okay, so coming to the second part of the presentation, that was just the DutchX. The second part is the dxDAO. I think I will relatively quickly skip over this. So this is kind of just an overview of how organizations develop first legally recognized organizations. Maybe long time ago we saw guilds. We saw then the first what's kind of a traditional company, the Dutch East India company shareholders, and we really see DAOs as a new form, in a next step in the evolution of organizations. So right now, if we want to, the way humans kind of organize themselves at large scale. So the only two forms that in which humans, 1 million or more humans organize is corporations and nation states. And the dxDAO is meant to be a very radical experiment in this direction. So if all goes well, we want to, the biggest goal, and it's kind of totally unclear if we can reach this already with this attempt, but we kind of are very certain that eventually it will be reached, is something called super scalable organizations. So right now, you have organizations, and if you add more and more people or more resources to it, usually the amount of kind of how much you get out of it by adding more resources and more people decreases. So the organizations don't necessarily scale well. Already in our startup, I can tell if we were 5, we were pretty efficient. Increasing the number to 50 doesn't mean your productivity increases by 10x. If we could ever imagine, or the highest, or the very high goal of DAOs would be to have network effects in your ability to make decisions. So network effects usually means that the value you get out of adding more is over proportional to adding more to the network. So usual example are like Facebook or all big marketplaces, all big networks. They tend to become kind of more valuable the more you add, and that's kind of the whole big goal for DAOs. But now make it concrete. So first of all, why do DAOs need blockchain at all? To enable that form of trust, or allow this form of coordination or cooperation across jurisdictions globally, potentially with thousands, even millions of people, but have strong guarantees about accountability, that the rules will be followed. The short history of DAOs. The most remarkable was, of course, the DAO back in the days. We think that the DAO already shortly showed the potential of DAOs. So I'm not sure who was kind of following it back then, but at least for a very short time, there was so much excitement about this DAO, and of course also maybe in a negative way, but also in a way, in a very collaborative and super interesting way, that all the projects in the space suddenly saw, okay, how can we be part of it? How can we participate? How can we make proposals to the DAO? So in a way, the DAO for a very short time, and it was really just like 1.5 months, and then it was already over. But for this 1.5 months, the DAO was really the absolute center. And through the DAO, you could have imagined that all the teams, in a way, collaborate because they all interact with the stack instead of doing their siloed things. So we hope that we can, or that the DAOs will reach this level of attention soon again. We think the technology and the game theory and all the mechanics, from smart contract security and so on, has evolved quite significantly, of course, over the last 2 years, 2 years. And it's time for another try, or actually it's almost 3 years now. 2016 was the DAO. So the DAO is it's using the DAO framework from DAOstack. Who has heard of DAOstack? Okay. So I mean, basically, there are a bunch of projects. They are focusing on what I tried to describe earlier. Really, this large-scale coordination. So with DAOs, you could say, well, let's just replicate what we have in a company, kind of the decision structure, like a board and voting members, and so kind of replicate it one-to-one into smart contracts. And that's already probably fine because it gives you some efficiency gains and so on. But we are more excited about really asking this question that I mentioned earlier: how do you coordinate 1 million people, maybe even 10 million, and in a way, in a quite radically new way. So in a way that you don't do simple. I mean, how it's done today is that you have hierarchies and you have a delegation of power. But could you imagine a system where just 1 million actors or participants kind of give some inputs and come to a decision, and effectively come to decisions and quickly make decisions without introducing hierarchies and delegation of power? And that's what DAOstack is about. So how is this the dxDAO, or how does it concretely work? Well, voting plays a big role, and that is the force token. Well, it's actually not a token, and we think it's quite important that it's not a token, but that's reputation. So if you have reputation, if you have 10 reputation, then you have like 10 voting rights. In the end, there's a total pool of, let's say, or it will be specifically 1 million reputation, and you hold just a fraction of this voting rights, and that's your reputation. So here I want to specifically think about, or I will actually show you the slide later. So now what we want to do is we want to start this DAO, and this DAO should be given control over this Dutch exchange. So kind of that's the first thing it has, or it starts with. It can potentially do, and if it really becomes as successful as we hope, and it becomes a super scalable organization or something, then it will probably do a lot of more things. But the DutchX will be a starting point. So it will control that. So it means it will have the ability to upgrade the contract. We have this proxy design where you can basically upgrade the contract. It could start changing the fee mechanism. It could start charging a fee. It could start, it could, do everything an owner of an exchange could do. So now probably the first question we have is, how do we distribute this reputation? So how do we distribute, or what's our goal to distribute ownership in this DAO? Who should be owners of this exchange? And maybe I am asking the audience, what do you think what should be our goals in setting up the ownership of this DAO? kind of who should be owners? What should be the incentives of them?
The users.
Definitely the users, yeah. So are there any other groups that should be, that would be good to have, kind of? Definitely market makers, yeah. Beyond those? Developers, absolutely, yeah.
So the website owners who kind of provide.
Exactly, yeah, definitely, yeah. And yeah, so and maybe more broadly, so if we think the DAO could do other things, so it could maybe govern other protocols. Okay, so basically, I will show you kind of how we set up the distribution, and so users and market makers are definitely the biggest, or the most important part. So that's why we give 50% just to those who have this Magnolia, and you can only get Magnolia by trading on the Dutch exchange. So basically, this will cover users and market makers. Then those two categories are something, and recently some people created the word lock drop. So this is something you can get a reputation purely for locking down Ether or tokens. Locking down means you have 10 Ether and you put them in a smart contract and locks them down for 1 year, let's say. After 1 year, you get it back. But in the end, it's of course a proof that you have Ether, and you have to commit to lock it, which is not directly a cost. I mean, you're of course not. I mean, you're not giving away the Ether, but for 1 year, I mean, you at least you commit to hold it, or you can't sell it for this 1 year, and you also. I mean, Ether is not yet. You can't really stake it, but there are at least some lending protocols where you could lend it and earn interest. So you're missing out on that. So basically, our interest in doing that, in giving 30% locking down tokens or locking down Ether, is that we want people that are in a way committed to the ecosystem. So those who have either have Ether or have token and are willing to hold them for a longer time, those are still good participants, because, well, first they might later trade those tokens. They might, well, be interested in or they might have a stake in other protocols because they have other tokens. So eventually, maybe this DAO could also govern parts or those protocols. And finally, it's kind of tries to find a balance between making it very easy to participate, because again, you don't have to spend anything, you don't even have to trade, you have to lock something. And then the last 10% we are it's designed to being actually sold. So those 10% you can buy, and that is with the Gen token. That is the token that DAOstack, the project that's providing the framework for this DAO, is doing. So the DAO will actually start with those Gen tokens. That's all it has in the beginning. Those Gen tokens and control over this exchange protocol. Yeah.
Did you discuss, when defining those ratios, did you discuss other concepts or maybe variants of this lock dropping? Because in some way, I noticed that in several projects, this lock dropping is now seems to be an interesting way how to deal with get a system into going.
Right.
But at the same time, I feel it's such a waste of resources just to lock them and don't do anything with it. So have there been discussions in your team on variants how to make this locked Ether more, let's say, valuable for everybody?
Yeah. I would say in a way it has to be. I would say in some sense it has to be a waste, or you a little bit like proof of work. It's proof of waste. I would actually call it proof of waste, but we didn't come up with a solution. I recently read one where they were suggesting to use then the locked tokens in Uniswap or to provide liquidity. Potentially that there is something where it could have been. Well, ideally this locked or this would actually provide liquidity for the exchange itself. But of course the usually. Well, the commitment then is much higher. So usually, if you provide your tokens for liquidity, you can also lose them to some, or maybe to a significant extent. So if we would have thought of the way, maybe there's one. We haven't.
Yeah. So
Sure.
Do you did like a math? Because I would say like if I need to do a lock drop, I would expect something in return, right?
Right.
So did you do like a simulation? Why would lock drop you with you and not
Exactly.
like a go gets die and then go to compounds?
Exactly. Yeah. Sure.
That.
So what people get here is, of course, the reputation, and that means the effectively ownership of this exchange. So now the question is, what does it help you? What is it worth? And it is there is no built-in mechanism yet where kind of reputation holder get some form of the trading fees. So in a way there is no it's good for nothing unless control, of course. So it can be the first proposal that the DAO executes. The first proposal it could do is say get rid of Gnosis tokens, get rid of OWL, get rid of Magnolia, and just have a fee that goes to reputation holders. That is something very possible because this DAO will have full control over this exchange. And as you can see here, there's no part where Gnosis gets like 30% or something like here. So it will be truly user controlled, and it will be truly up to the users or to those reputation holders to do with this exchange whatever they want. And again, if you think like controlling this exchange or this exchange has volume or liquidity, then being able to decide kind of whether it has fees and who gets those fees is probably worth something. So yeah. But it was specifically designed in a way that it will be then up to the DAO to make this decision and to So the DAO, a few things the DAO could do. The DAO could do a token sale. Or first it would say, no, we need to grow first and we don't want to, or we get, so it's really, maybe users just say, I'm a user of this exchange myself. I don't care. I just want to have a zero fee exchange. So yeah, the quite a bit of possibilities where this will go. Initial distribution of reputation. It will then be up to the DAO to define whether kind of about all upcoming proposals. So another thing the DAO could do is say, well, there was this 1 month period where after this 1 month, and this will start, by the way, at the end of April. At the end of April, this thing will start. So then for 1 month, you can do all those things. And at the end of May, the DAO will start. And then the DAO could say, well, in 6 months, for example, we give out more reputation, for example, still to the Magnolia holder. So we don't only want to have the users of the first month to be the owners of the DAO. We will kind of also give those who come later something, or doesn't. So that's then up to the DAO. But just the slide is here saying the DAO can later decide or kind of give out new reputation. This is roughly the this is the screenshot from how the DAO interface will look like. So there are different proposals. So there will be different. It's called schemes. So one is to make changes on the Dutch exchange. Another one is to make changes to the DAO itself. Then people can vote on it. The Gen tokens, they play a role in this governance process of the DAO. So DAOstack uses a combination out of markets and voting. So that means if a proposal comes in, first there's always a market, or in a way, a prediction market that predicts will this proposal be passed by the vote or not. So people can basically say, I think this is a good proposal, so I'm kind of betting that it will pass, and that is used as a signal to prioritize proposals. So those where the market signals, okay, this is likely to pass. They are so-called. They will be boosted and kind of voted on first, or with priority. So yeah, that is exactly the thing the DAOstack, in my view, does best. And the attention of that group is scarce. So there will be people that like participate as a side thing, and we have seen this in other token projects that use voting. That often the voter participation or the voter turnout is really low. So in the area of 0.2%. So this market adding this market mechanism in a way puts a price to attention and makes sure that only those proposals has to be voted on that are where the market already believes they have a good chance of passing. Sure, yeah.
Question on that. Gen holders are participants in the entire DAOstack ecosystem, right?
Yes.
So that means, as a result of that you have this filter of Gen holders, which are somehow might not own Magnolia and don't
Correct.
have any stake in dxDAO, but they are filtering the proposals, or can filter.
Yes, I mean, so the Gen is completely open. So, Gen is just a token. You can anyone can buy it. I mean, it's a liquid token. So in that sense, yes. In the prediction game, anyone can participate, or anyone who has an opinion about whether that will pass or will not pass. And I think that is a very important characteristics of those DAOs, that they can get signals from really anyone and not just people inside of the organization. However, and this openness is possible because they are directly held accountable for the signal. So if someone predicts it will pass and it doesn't, they just immediately lose money. So this very direct and very direct incentivization mechanism is like the filtering of the good and the bad signal. On the other hand, the voting is only done by reputation holders, and there it's particularly important that reputation is not a token. So if you acquire your vote, your right to vote, or kind of your like ownership in this dxDAO, you cannot simply sell it or trade it, or basically transfer it. And so in that sense, that is very closed. And that's something I was in the beginning also surprised of in a way, because we are very much used to most voting systems use tokens, and tokens are of course freely tradable, transferable. So we are used to this, or at least in this blockchain world, used to this idea that also your vote is tradable in a way. But it introduces, or I kind of more and more appreciated the logic or the reasons why they didn't allow that, and it's simply because it's a big problem of incentive alignment, because if something is super liquid and you can just trade it, you can buy a bunch of tokens, use them to vote, and you can immediately sell them. So you have no long-term commitment to the DAO or to the project. Well, it's quite easy to manipulate and to have voters that are not long-term interested in this thing. So by not making reputation tradable or transferable, it kind of artificially introduces some form of friction that is wanted in this case, and is wanted in the sense that you have it's more, well, the traditional form of reputation that you can build up and slowly build up, but you can't like just sell it.
Do you have a limited supply of reputation?
Yeah. So the initial reputation will be done according to this to this scheme, and after that it's just up to the DAO to allocate reputation. So it could inflate reputation, so create more and more, or give out more and more to people for some form of contribution. So it's potentially unlimited, but it's up to the existing reputation holders, whether it's.
So in the current system,
Yeah.
as soon as you use your reputation to vote,
Yeah.
what will happen? Is it just burn or
No. So your reputation stays your score. It's just a score, and you can vote on. I mean, it's not. Yeah. Yes.
Can you distribute your voting power over multiple options, or can you only vote for one scheme?
So I can show. I could do another, probably at the end, maybe do another demo. But it's always in the form: a proposal comes in, a proposal to do something, and this individual proposal, you can say yes or no, and then there is another proposal, and there you can also say yes or no. Yeah.
Again, probably we can go back to this diagram of the vote staking distribution.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So this is your definition of the vote staking period only. So assuming that this is launching in April, it's running I think for 2 or 4 weeks. How long?
For 4 weeks, yeah.
For 4 weeks, and
Yes.
then there's a cooling period.
Right.
But afterwards, so does this entire accumulation of voting power comes to a halt, and the DAO needs to define it from scratch again, or how do you plan for that?
Yeah. So after this 1 month or 4 weeks, hopefully we will see like 1,000 to 10,000 addresses holding in total 1 million of reputation, kind of given, and then it's totally up to them. So by default, then there is no further. Okay, there are tiny, or there are some built-in defaults that we have set, but the DAO could change them. So the defaults are, for example, anyone can make a proposal to the DAO, and then it will start this process of predicting and voting. And if the proposal is accepted, by default, the proposer will get, for a successful proposal, the proposer, whoever that is, it's an Ethereum address, will get some reputation, even if it's someone who doesn't has reputation. So anyone can make a proposal. So that's the only, so that is a built-in mechanism to distribute more reputation. And then there is also a built-in mechanism to redistribute reputation within those who already have some. And that is basically those who voted early for the outcome that the DAO will eventually make. So let's say the DAO eventually accepts it, you vote early for it, you vote early against it, then you would lose some reputation, and you would basically lose reputation to her. So it's a zero-sum game here. So those are the two defaults that exist, but it's all it's all up to the DAO to change that. So if you or what I could imagine the DAO to do is, for example, continue to incentivize kind of getting Magnolia, or basically trading on the Dutch exchange. And for example, the DAO could make a commitment that in 6 months it will give another, let's say 1 million would be distributed here, so another 200,000 reputation to whoever has Magnolia in 6 months. That would be kind of one obvious choice, or some simple choice.
But in general, if somebody is really very liquid, taking over all your DAI auctions you're running at the moment and all other DutchX auctions, such an entity is very likely to dominate the dxDAO in the beginning and probably also later on, because if every single voting is up to a reputation holder.
I mean that is, of course, I would say that is a positive feedback loop we want to encourage. So I mean, we hope that people will trade specifically to get Magnolia. So that means suddenly we have more trading volume on the Dutch exchange. So that will raise. So we hope that at least during this month, or I'm almost pretty certain that during at least this month, the Dutch exchange will be the decentralized exchange with the highest trading volume, which is not a super high bar, but nevertheless, so that brings trading volume to the Dutch exchange. That of course brings interest to the Dutch exchange. That of course brings interest in the dxDAO, and then of course, like one entity trying to dominate it would just cause more people to look at it and more people to join. So we hope by this, then enough other people will trade. Again, like this is only 50%, so there are still another 50%. So I think it's not completely impossible, of course, that a single entity would dominate it, but I think it's at least not that easy. And if then it helps, or at least kind of an attempt to do that would tremendously help this thing to kind of get off the ground and get the required liquidity and attention.
I also think, so are you working on something for this not to happen? Because I also would assume, because of this is like the first month going on, and I would assume it's in every best interest in the community to be at least diversified. Right.
I mean, the things we are concretely doing is right now we I mentioned this earlier, doing this 1 million DAI challenge, or those $10,000, $100,000 DAI auctions. put in $100,000 DAI. So basically, we want to get already market makers and traders used to it, so that in the end there will be many. Then we are partnering with I think 15 token projects that will just bring their own tokens to or list their own tokens there. So if you want to dominate all the trading, you would need to dominate all the 15, and likely there's not necessarily a single entity, a single person that holds significant stake in 10, 15 different token projects. Yeah, so then also it's not one quite good thing about this auction mechanism is that it's not possible to or on a normal order book exchange you can fairly easy do fake trades. So I mean you do an order and you fill the same order yourself. Here it is going back to the quite far away. Right here, you kind of every seller puts in the orders, but it's usually not just one. So I put in some money, and again, like all of you, put in a small amount, and then in the end, it's just one basket or one batch. Everything is put together. So if I want to kind of try to dominate it, and I would try to like just bid against myself early, I couldn't like just bid against my tokens. I would need to pay everyone else this high price. So I'm kind of forced to wait all the way until it actually hits the normal price, and then of course like just other people will bid and outcompete each other. So I think there is no easy way to, or even if you have a lot of tokens to dominate the trading volume here. Yeah, sure.
Can you tell us a little bit about the design process of the vote staking? So did you run any simulations of different algorithms, and then also the combination of the different ways of vote staking, or how was your process coming?
Yes, I mean we did. Well, we have this big Excel sheet where we are trying to compare the different options. So where is the wait, is it? So basically, we want to know like what is the most the cheapest way in a way to get a reputation, and I think one design decision that was a good one, that we gave percentages instead of saying kind of for one reputation you need to have one magnolia or something like that. So in a way, if one of those options will be kind of the easiest to get a reputation, it will be kind of self-regulated, because then more people will join this option and therefore make it harder, because it's always relative. So out of those 30%, if you're the only one participating in that because no one finds this attractive, you just need to lock down one token, you get the full 30%. Then you say, oh, well, that's easy. So I put in 2 tokens. Then I, of course, only get like 10% out of those 30, and you get the other 20. And then, so I guess didn't do a real simulation, but at least tried to consider things to make it work, even if, or make it market based. So even if we got some numbers wrong, it's kind of self-regulating.
And is there any transparency during vote staking? Yes.
Yes. So I think there is a screenshot. Yeah. Okay. I can show you the interface, but yeah, short answer is yes. You can see during the period how much tokens are staked here, how much Magnolia is in existence, and yeah, you see all those things.
Is there anything else you're doing during vote staking? So in terms of communication, is this something you want to promote very actively?
Oh, definitely, yeah, of course. So we, well, it's partly because I'm here, why I'm here. So we just on last Friday, just a few days ago, or not yet published, but had the first draft of a 40-page white paper of the whole system, of everything I explained to you, ready, that we are sharing. Again, we did a bunch of meetups, will do continuously meetups. So, well, of course we want to promote this idea, and we want to, or this DAO, and want to get as many participation as possible.
Can we go back to the big blue slide with the cake diagram?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's possible to register Magnolia tokens to generate reputation, and reputation is capped at 1 million. But I don't have a good understanding of the timeframes we're talking about here. Is this
30 days? Yeah.
Or does this happen once until?
Yes.
The DAO is launched, and then we have a kind of initial distribution of all these kind of voting weights, and I guess that's the case. Since the Magnolia supply is not capped,
Yes.
it is kind of the main incentive for traders or platform users to just make Magnolia and then kind of increase their influence by generating reputation. But the thing is that, if I understand correctly, the later people join in, and the harder it will be for them to build up a lot of reputation to kind of influence the actions of the DAO. Is that right? So there is an incentive for people who kind of see the light early to kind of
Right. Exactly. So the dates are on April 28th, I believe. This 30-day, or from that day on, only from that day on, it will be for the first time be possible to generate Magnolia. It's not yet possible. It will be by default possible to generate it forever, also beyond the 30 days, but only after 30 days. The initial distribution of the DAO is done according to that. So yeah, there will be the incentive in the beginning to trade and to generate generate Magnolia to get ownership in the DAO. After that, it's up to the DAO. I do think, to kind of build on what you mentioned, I do think it would be a good idea for the DAO, but I mean, then it will be up to the DAO to say, in 6 months, we will again give out more reputation to kind of all the Magnolia holders back then in 6 months. So to continue to continuously like incentivize participation and give also those who come a little bit later a chance to participate. But it's up to the DAO. I think that's of course always a big trade-off you have to do in, or like a mechanism design, how much you want to incentivize early adoption, or kind of, or for what a time frame you want to spread it over. We could have built in something to kind of try to force the DAO, like giving out more reputation later. But practically, that's very hard to do, because either you give full control to the DAO after this time, then it can basically change whatever rules you set up front, or you have some rules that can't be changed, but that's always hard to do. So yeah, so we gave up on that and like wrote ideas in the white paper what the DAO could do, but in the end it can just screw it and do whatever it wants.
What I'm wondering is, every single organization needs to kind of get their own tune
Yes.
in a certain period of time, and so it might be possible that after the initial vote stake, it takes a while
Absolutely. Yeah.
until participants find their similar language, and
Right.
and this also could, I'd say, cool down the interest and the attention around dxDAO. However, it seems that you are very inspired by the initial, very first DAO. Have you any experience based on that, how this worked out from the starting point and then first 4 to 6 weeks?
Right. Yeah. I mean, of course, that was a very that was a period where people started to think about all kind of additional layers or protocols or additional protocols. So stuff like the base thing was completely open, so anyone can submit a proposal, and then there's a vote. But of course, it makes a lot of sense to have specific standards for a proposal. So a proposal should always contain this part and that part, and if it doesn't, then it's kind of rejected by default. So this kind of meta governance, it is. I definitely expect that to happen at the beginning of the DAO. So, what I would assume there will be some proposals that are, directly malicious. So someone just saying, I just make a proposal to send all the gen tokens to me. I mean, that's an easy thing to do, and it's actually anyone can make any proposal. So of course people will try those things, and of course it's the mechanisms are we tried to design them in a way that that is costly. So to actually try to get this proposal through, you would need to stake for it. So you would need to bet that it's passing. If then the DAO is somewhat functional, then of course it should reject it. And in a way, those who predicted against it and kind of were responsible to say, wait, this is a bad idea, they will gain something because they were right in predicting that it was a bad proposal. So there are. So of course we hope that people will stress test it in the beginning and that it will develop this meta governance. And on the question that it might lose interest, I think because it is because it has. I think the main benefit of this DAO is that it has the full autonomy. So in many other systems where they try DAOs or on-chain governance, they only give, or other projects are more, in a way they give more, they say they give more control to the DAO. The DAO should govern their whole system, but therefore they usually have those escape hatches built in. So some form of curator or some form of cutting down the autonomy of the DAO, that it couldn't just pay out the funds. And here we don't do that, and we can do that because we only give it the Dutch exchange. So in the end, we don't say, all of Gnosis belongs to this DAO. So in a way, we are careful by only giving it the Dutch exchange, but that we actually do fully and radically. So that's why I hope there will be then interest. All right. I think, unless there are more questions, we should probably wrap it up or
Last chance.
and end it.
So proposals take the form of explicit code to
Yes.
be Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So the entire process is algorithmic. You don't-
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. So a proposal is very concretely is well, has a destination address and some code. So some or okay, you can go to this to this thing here. So there are different schemes. So a scheme or something like what a scheme could be. So a scheme has specific rights. So one scheme, for example, has the right to allocate a new reputation, for example. And then what you would do is you would send a proposal towards the scheme and ask it to give you new reputation. It makes sense to separate the schemes because you maybe want to have like different voting thresholds on different schemes. So one scheme has a lot of rights to do anything, and then maybe you want to have higher or kind of make it more harder to get it through. So this DAO will start with 3 schemes. One scheme is kind of responsible for making arbitrary changes to the Dutch exchange. So like changing the fees, changing the 6-hour periods, whatever, making changes to the Dutch exchange. The other one, the second scheme is just awarding a new reputation, giving out more reputation to newcomers or to whomever, and also paying out Ether or tokens, so like spending funds. And the third scheme is a scheme to register new schemes. So basically, if the DAO then wants to do something completely new, like have control an ENS domain to also host the front end directly. So right now the front ends are centralized web, but of course the DAO could own an ENS domain pointed to IPFS and effectively host an interface. Then it would probably first need a new scheme, but it can all be done.
So there's a very tight structure for any kind of proposal.
Yeah. So well, the proposals that you can do right away are proposals to change some stuff in the Dutch exchange. The second one is award tokens or reputation, and the third one, which is very broad, then is to register a new scheme and to allow a new set of proposals. But since that's possible, in the end, everything is possible.
But there are no predefined, let's say, thresholds for getting things through, right?
There are. So for each of those, I would share the white paper. That's of course all in the white paper. I would share it afterwards. So for each of those 3 schemes, there are like 10 different parameters. So stuff like, well, how long is the vote period? How many people need to participate? How much stake is needed to boost it? What is then I mentioned stuff like this. If you successfully create a new proposal, you get some reputation. Of course, it's also a variable. Then I mentioned this, like if you vote correct or incorrect, you lose some, you gain some. Of course, it's another parameter. So in the end, there are like 10, 15 parameters for the 3 schemes each scheme that had to be predefined in some way. And the way to change them would be to, well, remove a scheme and like register it with other parameters again.
How much of this is your design and how much of this is given by DAOstack?
That is all completely DAOs. That's all DAOstack's design here. We only, like together with DAOstack, of course, developed or decided what schemes would we need for this particular dxDAO and kind of which parameters would make sense here. So one thing, like just to give you an example, you can think of, you need to think about roughly what is the average value of one proposal, or what would need to be the average value for a proposal towards the DAO. So like in our thinking, accepting a proposal comes with costs, and that's the cost. The cost is the attention of the group. So like if you ask this DAO with 100 or 1,000 members, they kind of need to evaluate it. What makes it worse enough to evaluate it and to submit it? We currently think about, and there are parameters that really directly translate to that cost. So the DAO itself will also pay out for successful proposals. So there is this staking game where you can predict that it will pass, and it will predict or that it does not pass. And the DAO itself, by default, always predicts that a proposal will not pass. So proposal comes in, the first thing the DAO does is kind of blindly, I predict that it doesn't pass. And that makes quite a bit of sense because first, if it's a bad proposal, I mean, it's the most defensive strategy, because if it's a bad proposal, great, then we are already on the same side. Then someone else needs to first like predict more money or more tokens that it will pass to just have it considered by the DAO. On the other hand, if it's a good proposal, then this initial money that's predicted against it is an incentivization for those who say, okay, this is actually a good one. I want to predict that I predict that it will pass, because then they who correctly identify it as a good proposal, they will get the payout from the DAO, because the DAO then like basically makes the wrong prediction and says it fails. So now, of course, we had to consider like how large is this amount that the DAO by default predicts against it. Roughly, that is like $500. So basically, that means the DAO pays out $500 for a successful proposal, and that again means the proposal needs to be worth at least $500 to the DAO. Otherwise, it will long term it can't work. And those are to your question. Those are of course a form of meta governance or things people in the DAO need to figure out. Okay, well, we can't accept those random proposals because it's too expensive for us. So we can only accept like proposals that are actually worth at least that amount. But it was also required to set this amount fairly high, because if you just look at the pure transaction fees, everything is on chain. You have like probably a transaction costs you 50 cents if you have 1,000 to 10,000 people voting. So just the voting costs probably like $50 to $100 in transaction fees. So those proposal needs to be of not, some relevant economic value. And that's not even considering the time people spend on evaluating it.
What about the building the proposal, right? Because the proposals are code.
Yeah, for the default for the default proposals, like changing the fee, or for that we will have an in UI that basically does that for you. But if you want to
for example, like delegating your voting power, right?
Right.
This is something that you don't have today, and it sounds like something that it might not be as easy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So of course there's a bunch of things that could be or can be built around. Where people would have an advantage if they can write code.
But what would be the incentive? Would be like a person that already has like a reputation
Right.
wants it to grow and
Right. So the DAO, or as someone who, if you do some contribution, I think you did a valuable contribution to the system. Of course, you could make a proposal to, like, you describe your contribution and you propose to get, well, reputation or simple payout in tokens. And sorry.
you say as part of the proposal.
As part of the
you include your
Right.
payout.
Right. Yeah. Or I mean, that's one thing to make it part of a proposal. Another thing is, I mean, in theory, you could also just build something and then make a proposal to get rewarded afterwards, or say upfront, I want to, I would build this, but only if the DAO rewards me this and that. So that's all possible. Yeah. All right. I have no idea what's time.
Martin, for this
Sure.
talk.